Arena Trap is banned in every generation, 4 through 9. Not just Dugtrio, even Diglett and Trapinch are prohibited from using the ability in those generations. It may not be readily apparent why this is the case for less experienced players. Dugtrio isn't an insane wall breaker or sweeper. However, its presence is so detrimental to metagame health that among competitive players, its brokenness is considered as fundamental a truth as something like Oko moves. Why this is the case is what we'll be exploring in this video. Dugtrio is a simple Pokemon. It forces KOs on certain Pokemon for the benefit of its teammates. In this case, it is not unlike Magnezone, which nobody would argue has such a negative effect. However, Magnezone only traps Steel types, whereas Arena Trap works on anything without Flying type, Levitate, or in Gens 5 and on, an unpopped Air Balloon. This makes Dugtrio more akin to Shadow Taggers, which most single players can agree is a universally busted ability. Yes, Dugtrio doesn't effectively beat every grounded Pokemon, but nor does Magnezone trap every Steel, most famously Heatran. Furthermore, Pokemon that pair well with Magnezone are, on average, not unreasonable to answer with non-Steel types. For example, in Generation 5, the outrage spamming dragons Magnezone facilitates can be checked well with Pokemon like Landorus Therian and Gliscor. Meanwhile, Dugtrio's wider reach means it can zero in on many more Pokemon, including the few that are capable of stopping one of Dugtrio's dangerous teammates. What this means in practice is different from generation to generation, but the basic concept remains the same. We'll get to generation-specific examples soon, but first we must explore another aspect of what makes Dugtrio so overwhelming. The fact that it is so good against both offensive and defensive Pokemon. This also stands in stark contrast to Magnezone, which is by large and used to remove defensive threats. Of course, what instantly comes to mind with Dugtrio is it removing a wall for the benefit of a sweeping teammate. For example, in Generation 4, removing Tyranitar and or Heatran helps out something threatening like Zapdos, Latias, and other several variants of Calm Mind Jirachi. While in Generation 7, removing Toxapex allows a whole host of Pokemon, notably Charizard Y, to go berserk. However, just as key as Dugtrio's ability is to enable defensive cores, bulky Pokemon are often limited by the fact that, over time, they cannot withstand hard hitters. Dugtrio, though, is able to remove these hard hitters and thus effectively make solid cores unbreakable for the opponent. Let me know your thoughts on Dugtrio and Arena Trap down below, if it should be banned or not, and subscribe for more content. Let's look at what made Dugtrio broken on a generation by generation basis. In Generation 4, Dugtrio's greatest, most consistent partner was Calm Mind Clefable. Not only did Dugtrio remove checks like Breloom and Choice Band Tyranitar, Clefable was also a perfect check to the Dragon Dance Gyarados and Dragonite being used to try and take advantage of the free turns Dugtrio afforded after it trapped something. Now, it was effectively impossible to meaningfully punish Dugtrio for doing its thing. Dugtrio's reach was huge in general. It had several targets it easily picked off on most DBB teams in addition to the aforementioned Pokemon, most notably Jirachi and Heatran. Sure, not every set on those Pokemon lost to Dugtrio one-on-one. For example, Choice Scarf Heatran. But that's where Dugtrio's teammates come in again. Clefable was perfect for this. Something like Scarf Heatran or physically defensive Jirachi was hapless to stop Calm Mind Clefable. Dugtrio was also excellent at trapping special defensive support Clefable. Even if Clefable rid Dugtrio of its Choice Band with knockoff, Dugtrio would use Screech and beat Clefable anyway. Speaking of auxiliary Dugtrio moves, it would even run Pursuit. Not redundant at all, since this let it extend its trapping range even to Gengar and Choice Scarf Rotom locked into Thunderbolt. Of course, Dugtrio was not useless beyond trapping these targets. Trapping range extended even beyond the Pokemon it was explicitly tasked with removing. Even with Dugtrio's unimpressive attack stat, a Stab, Choice Band, Earthquake hit quite hard. So Dugtrio often found itself picking off a huge variety of grounded chip Pokemon, most notably offensive variants of the water types trifecta of Starmie, Suicune, and Swampert. The latter two are quite naturally bulky, and Dugtrio's Band of Earthquake still put a charge in them for roughly half their health. That's absolutely huge to be put out of commission once you drop to such health. This exemplifies what made Dugtrio such a strain both in the team builder and battle. The timer it put the opponent on was far too fast ticking, resulting in counterplay to it being unreasonably restrictive. Furthermore, though the lack of team preview could often demand a fairly high level of precision from the Dugtrio player, it also worked to Dugtrio's benefit. Oops, you went to your Tyranitar to counter Zapdos, and a U-turn, and now Dugtrio's in and Tyranitar is gone. What was the alternative? Not going to your Zapdos counter? Oh, and what's that? Most good Zapdos answers are Dugtrio weak, and those same Pokemon are tasked with handling Pokemon like Latias, Jirachi, Heatran, and Clefable? You see the problem. Now, this lose-lose situation that the combination of a switch move and Dugtrio puts you in is the case even in Team Preview scenario. What are you going to do? Go to something that doesn't counter the major threat on the field? This segues perfectly into Generation 5, where Dugtrio enabled broken strategy after broken strategy. Granted, the likes of Genesect and Tornadus Therian were broken with or without Dugtrio's help, but Dugtrio made them about 1,000 times more unbearable than they already were, since you couldn't even switch your check into their U-turns. Of course, Dugtrio's main role in Generation 5, like everything else, was to play a part in the weather wars, most notably on Sun teams, which loved the removal of not just Tyranitar but Heatran as well, so their Venusaur and Volcarona could let loose. Some Rain teams enjoyed Dugtrio's presence as well, especially during the Genesect and Tornadus Therian days. Not having to contend with Tyranitar made spamming Rain threats much easier. Additionally, trapping bulky Jirachi made Tornadus, both Incarnate and Therian, even more absurdly dangerous. However, it was really Sun that utilized Dugtrio's talents best. For a long time in Black and White 1, Hippowdon was actually the preferred sand setter over Tyranitar, specifically because it was not vulnerable to Dugtrio. Eventually, the player base realized just how unbelievably constricting dealing with Chlorophyll Venusaur was, and so Chlorophyll Sun was banned. But Dugtrio continued to be a negative presence, enabling Cresselia to wall the entire metagame in Sun, and that's when everyone realized that Dugtrio was the issue. Initially, the player base wanted Arena Trap as a whole banned, but thanks to some classic smoke on politics, Dugtrio was banned instead, and thus people were actually using Diglett, and succeeding for some time longer before Arena Trap was axed in its entirety. You can see Dugtrio enabling a stally tactic here. Cresselia is not some monstrous offensive threat, yet Dugtrio was easily able to stifle the few Pokemon that could withstand it in Sun. It even trapped things it would seem like it had no business trapping. With the support of Magic Bounce Zatsu, it was easily able to keep Stealth Rock off the field, and thus Dugtrio could effectively run Focus Sash. As such, Dugtrio could hard switch into Kyurem Black, live any hit, and KO it back with Reversal. Absurd stuff. This Kyurem Black example was also relevant when Dugtrio began appearing on stall teams in both ORAS and Sun and Moon for that matter. In fact, in both generations, Dugtrio really made the most of Team Preview. In some games, it didn't even need to knock out anything. Even just forcing Swords Dance Tapu Bulu to take a Toxic could be enough to break the game. Mega Heracross destroys stall? Yeah, until Dugtrio air releases it. With incredible defensive cores bolstered by multiple defoggers, most teams lacked tools to break through them that were not also vulnerable to Dugtrio. Even those not weak to Dugtrio on paper could often be picked off by it. Your Keldeo lost some health? Oops, Dugtrio range. Dugtrio was also incredibly restrictive in this sense. Of course, in Generation 7, Dugtrio was even more dangerous because it got far stronger, both in the sense that its base attack got boosted to 100 for some reason, and in that sense that it could use Groundium Z to power up its Earthquake even further, extending its trapping range and even bypassing grassy terrain's Earthquake weakening effect. It lost the Z-move capability but continued this style of play in Generation 8. Not to say that it wasn't also an absurd enabler of offensive threats, of course, especially in Generation 7. Dugtrio enabled stall to a ridiculous extent, but it was also a huge threat to stall, pairing with Mega Charizard Y most notably. Incidentally, it was in Generation 7 that people first started trying Diglett in its stead when talks of Dugtrio ban arose, and to good effect. It's what shifted the conversation to be about Arena Trap as a whole. And in Generation 9, Dugtrio received two huge buffs. Swords Dance is a move to boost its attack, and Terastallization. It was deemed too much for OU before even allowed play, so Arena Trap was banned. To sum it up, Dugtrio creates insane team building and in-battle strain with how many Pokemon it can pick off or even just render useless or somehow weaken for the rest of the game. It enables its teammates to unreasonable levels. It's already tough enough to deal with such Pokemon and cores without Dugtrio forcibly ruining the few tactics capable of doing so. This creates an overwhelmingly case of team matchup. The effect is so powerful that it's best not to have it around, even with Diglett or Trapinch. Wait, what about Generation 3, you might wonder? Well, my boy BKC has a video on this exact topic. The short version is that the threats in Generation 3 aren't so strong that Dugtrio supports pushing them over the edge. However, it is still quite excellent, and there is a small percentage of the player base that finds its presence negative. For more details, you can check out that video down below. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you let me know by leaving a like and subscribe to my channel as I upload these discussion videos 3 to 4 times a month, and competitive Pokemon every single day.